Hello, everybody, and welcome to a little interview with Zeda and me. I'm Louis, and he's Zeda. So
I am
we're
Zeda.
gonna talk about the LJL today, and obviously, how their chances at MSI are. So let's start with kind of characterizing the LJL as a whole. So the LJL has been founded last year, I think, right?
2 years ago, actually. This is the
Ooh.
second full year of competition.
All right. So how far has the infrastructure in general developed? Like, especially considering, a studio is everybody living near Tokyo or something?
Um, it's been actually a very long and weird ride considering the short history. When it was started, there were no professional teams. I mean, everybody was working a job. Everybody was playing at the same time. It was much like OCE actually, where you see, all of the teams they go to university. These guys they work part-time at food places sometimes while going to uni, while playing League of Legends professionally, and it's super stressful. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere came Detonation Focus Me. They said, we're going to sponsor a full-time league team. And for the past couple of splits, they've been dominant. But since then, Rampage is a full-time league team. Unsold Stuff Gaming has a full-time league team. Like, most of these teams do now pay their players to play. So it's getting a lot more competitive in the last split or so.
All right. So do they have a studio at this point? Just wondering.
They do have a studio. They have a whole land studio. It's not like a spectator studio, but it is a studio.
All right, and they have their own server now as well, like as
Yeah,
of I
they've
think a
been
year ago, right?
yeah, a year ago. They've been playing on the Korean and Chinese servers, which actually made some of their solo queue talents really insane. They've also played on NA. A lot of them have said so. Varying from 140 ping to like the 70 to 80 on Korea, but in Korea you still have to get a Korean account. So a lot of them actually played on NA instead of Korea,
Hmm.
which is odd considering the ping, but much easier to get an account, much easier to play on it. So
Yeah.
getting their
So
own server has been it's been a big step forward for them. I think that it's a really good start for the region as a whole, and there's a lot of people in the region actually. I mean, Japan is a country has 150 million people in a very small space, so I think that they have a lot of room for talent, a lot of room for growth.
all right. Just to clarify here, in order to get an account on the Korean server, you need a social security number in Korea, which you can
Yes.
only get from getting there, going there.
You can only get it from theoretically being a Korean citizen or
No, no, no,
having.
no, no. That's actually a false idea. You
Really?
have to have been to Korea. You issued a number as soon as you enter Korea.
Okay, okay. I didn't actually know that, so that's a good thing to know.
Yeah. All right. So that a bit on the history. This season, has been up and down the meta ladder all over the world. We started off with utility AD carries, then went to lethality AD carries, and now with the Blade of the Ruin King AD carries. Mid lane has changed quite a lot from burst mages to roaming mages. Top lane has been tanks into carries into tanks and carries. Everything's kind of up and down. So, how has the meta developed in the LGAL?
It's actually kind of interesting because they don't pay attention fully to the way that the meta shifts, and just now it seems like they're figuring out exactly how to optimize their play best. But they have done some interesting picks. I mean, we saw things like even in the semis. I mean, they were bringing out picks like Katarina, like these champs that you usually think of as reserved for just high elo solo queue play. They're always willing to bring out mechanical carries. They're always willing to bring out, split pushing. Split pushing has been a tradition of theirs, but it's evolved over this season in particular to be much less about, can our mid laner do the damage? Can our, star players, generally the mids in Japan, really step up to the plate? And much more about where is our team going? What's the rotation for? What are we getting off this? What's the objective?
So we're kind of going away from a solo queue playstyle and more into
Mhm.
a 5v5 style?
Yeah, actually, and it's been great to watch. I mean, especially I think in the Unsold Stuff Gaming Rampage series, we really saw the development of both of those teams over the best of 5 series. And obviously, we'll get to that in just a bit, but it's actually really interesting to see and watch a new region, a very new region, just start to grow.
All right, so the LJL playoffs has concluded on patch 7.5. Am I correct on that?
I believe it was 7.5. It was about 2.5 weeks ago at this point. I think the end of March it was just wrapping up.
All right. So, what kind of picks did we generally see? I mean, we probably had some, deviating picks, but what was the general trend in, the playoffs?
It was much like the rest of the world. I mean, Camille was high priority. We saw Elises. We saw, Ezreals, Lucians. Like, these picks wouldn't be out of place in most other regions, I don't think. Besides, again, a couple of the solo queue picks. Like, there was, as I said, Unstolen Stuff Gaming. They wanted to play Katarina, and, they did play the Katarina. But some things that do have a little bit higher priority in that region, they do like their attack speed Varus. It's kind of an interesting pick. We've seen it a couple times.
I mean, it's not really that. Like, how is it built?
The Runans, and then you get just basically Bork Runans and go for, burning them down, essentially. It's sort of the Korean build for Lucian, but applied to Varus. It's not that strange again, but that's, a little bit off. It's not, everybody's top pick AD sort of thing in most regions.
Yeah, I can see that one, yeah. All right. Sorry. Yeah, continue if you have something.
The last couple of picks, I mean, it's pretty standard. They love their Elise, they love their, Lulu, their Zyra. But the one thing that stands out, the one thing that Japan has over a lot of other regions, they play TK top. They love TK top. I don't know why they, the other regions haven't seen the power of TK top. Maybe they just don't think that it can survive in a really gank-heavy environment. But Japan plays TK top all the time.
So what do you think is, like, first of all, how do they build TK top, and how do they play it?
It's your pretty standard tank build. You see generally Sunfires and, Spirit Visages and Banshees and everything that you'd expect to see on a normal tank. But it's just Tahm Kench, so he does percent health, he has CC, he has saving his teammates, and instead of being in the support role where he's, generally limited in the amount of tankiness he can bring, he gets his shields repeatedly, which makes him 2 to 3 times harder to kill for most of these compositions.
All right, so what role does he generally play then? Like, is he a split pusher? Is he just there to save his AD carry, or how can I, like, Tahm Kench's support is relatively simplistic because basically he can't do anything but, save the carry because late game, he doesn't really have the tankiness. But, if you build him full tank, like, how does it work out?
Generally, it works out exactly as you'd expect. I mean, it's the full tank AD experience. So you go and you walk down into your team fight whenever you need to. So a lot of the times he will be, as you said, in the side lane split pushing. Japan loves to have their top laners in a side lane and just farming it up, shoving it in, trying to get a turret. And then they have TPs. They always bring TP. They always have rotation abilities. But now TK has 2 of them. So he can TP down into a fight and then ult back up. Or he can ult down into a fight and TP back up. So he's got double the rotation abilities, and that makes him like a Shen in terms of, being able to rotate across the map. But also he's Tahm Kench. You're really not going to be able to kill the AD carry or the mid or even the support. Whoever you want to pick out becomes a lot harder to do.
All right, so he basically, does he only, like, owning is a bad word, but, he rarely uses his ult to teleport teammates, is that correct?
Sometimes. It's only recently that we've really seen the gank TK style coming out, like where 2 members roam with the TK. But sometimes we've seen it. It's just very infrequently because of the way that the TK plays, yes.
All right. Sticking on that for a second, what are TK's, like, matchups? Like, what do you play it into, really? Like, do you only play it in tanks because of the percent health damage, or would you also play it into a Kled, a Camille, something like that?
Camille tends to have a really good early game against it, so you don't generally want to do that because a lot of the times in Japan, whoever has the 15-minute lead, actually we saw this in the semis and finals. There was exactly one game uh, out of all of them where the team with the lead at 15 minutes didn't win the game.
All right.
Exactly one game. So playing from behind still not fully developed yet, and so if you go into a losing matchup, it's generally not the best. So they really do love to play it into the Nautilus, the Maokai, the Malphite. Maokai's actually not super popular. It's mostly Nautilus is the tank top, but yeah, they'll play it into anything that's, just trying to brawl it out because it's so good at just putting out damage onto a tank.
So let me do a quick round of like maybe a bit more off-meta picks that we have seen in certain roles, and if they are played in, the LJL. So Aatrox. Did we see an Aatrox game? I think not, right?
No.
Did we see a Kled game or Kled in general?
Actually not Kled either, surprisingly. Kled has been mysteriously absent. We've seen it in, Korea. We've seen it in, the, LPL. We haven't seen Kled here. They're very much stuck on the Camille as their sort of top lane power pick. Even post-nerf, they love Camille. They think that it's, the bee's knees in terms of just being able to deal with things. But it's recently been rotated more towards the support role even. After the Camille nerfs, they're, picking it and they say, okay, that's not a fantastic matchup, just put it in support and it can do the damage.
All right. Sorry, I wanted to say something. Forgot. Oh yeah. So Camille gets through bans in the LJL usually.
Surprisingly often. Camille doesn't get banned very often. Even in the finals, even when players are very potent on it, it's been an insane pick for some of them. It's not played all that often, and it's really strange sometimes. But it's not banned all that often. It's played a lot, but it's not banned all that often.
All right. Do we have any permabans there?
Permabans. They don't like to play against Mals. Mals is absolutely a permaban in Japan. They no matter where he goes, mid or support, it's just they don't let Mals through very often. The rest of the bans kind of rotate around what is mostly meta. Like Ashe on the last patch was banned a lot. She was very strong as the Korean build Ashe. Her utility was great. Her dueling was great. And other than that, it's like Thresh, we don't see banned very often in other regions, but it's banned in Japan. And then Syndra, Lulu, and Tahm Kench, as I mentioned earlier.
All right. Jungle, I guess Rengar is a pretty big pick, right?
Sometimes. Rengar has actually fallen a little bit out of favor for these more traditional meta junglers, I guess I would say. Things like the Elise, things like the Graves. Gragas has actually been a jungle as well in Japan, but yeah, they're still developing their own sort of picks.
What was that, Graves or Gragas?
Graves and Gragas, they both play.
Okay. Gragas top as well then, I guess?
No, actually, not really.
Not at all. Okay.
It's mostly Gragas jungle. You'd be very surprised to find a Gragas top in the LJL, but it has been played occasionally. They prefer, instead of the Gragas, they really do like to play the Shen. So it's a lot of times it'll be Shen Nautilus is the top lane, but occasionally you will see a Gragas. It's just very infrequent. I think they're just bringing it in as of now.
Is the LJL sold on the Ivern pick overall?
No, actually. We haven't seen much Ivern picked or banned at all. I think we've seen it like 1 or 2 games. They really don't favor Ivern. They favor, as of right now at least, early game pressure junglers with tanky top laners. So they just, instead of having a damaged top laner and Ivern jungle, they go the other way around.
All right. Yeah, moving on. Mid lane, did they really jump on the bandwagon of the roaming mid laners? I guess so, right? Or do they still play a lot of immobile burst mages?
They're very much on the burst mage train.
Okay.
Syndra is a big pick. We've seen a little bit of Ahri and things like that. Some stuff that you might not usually see, but it's mostly Syndra. They do like Talia. They do, play a lot of those more static mids. But even though they play static mids, it's mostly because of the comps. Like if you're bringing a tanky top laner, you need the really high burst damage mids.
All right. AD carry, I think you already said it. We have the Varus, we have the Lucian, we have the Ashe banned all the time.
Yeah, all the time, all the time.
Yeah. So
Actually, I'm looking through my stats here, and we did have a couple Ivern bans in playoffs. We had like 3 of them. So
but no
it
picks.
was banned a little bit, but it was never picked.
Okay, that's interesting. So they're more afraid of it than was it a specific series where it was banned? Do you know that?
It was the same series. It was Unsold Stuff Gaming versus Rampage.
And it was banned against who? Do you think?
It was banned against Unsold Stuff Gaming by Rampage, and Rampage has Tussle, who is one of the more aggressive early game junglers. They were really afraid, I think, of him getting behind in certain cases.
Okay.
So that's my interpretation of why they banned it.
Okay, and lastly, support picks. Do we more have like the mage and poke type supports like the Lulu, Zyra, stuff like that, or do we yeah, or like do we have any more engage and pick style supports, like for example we saw in the LCL some Blitzcranks. Obviously we have some Alistair picks throughout the globe. Is that a thing, like something in that direction?
Not really. They really do like their mage poke style supports, Karma, Nami. Just there've been Thresh is basically permanent. If he ever gets through, he's picked every time. So yeah, the only real engaged support we see very often is Thresh, and he's on the perm ban list for a reason. Everybody loves to play him. Everybody loves Thresh. They think that he's fantastic. Of course he is. He has, a great kit for engaging and keeping an AD safe, but yeah, they do favor their mage and poke supports extremely heavily. I mean, it's, again, anything that does damage. Karma, Brand, Zyra, Nami, anything that they can get to just poke people out and try and knock them out of lane.
Yeah. All right. So in general, like, there are like basically 5 things that you can do in a game. So we have team fighting, we have split pushing, we have sieging, we have picking, and we have poking. So what kind of playstyle does the LJL kind of favor?
I think we'd actually have to approach this more team by team, because it's been a real renaissance in the last couple of weeks, and it's such an overused term sometimes in League, but especially with Rampage. I mean, most other teams focus around, poke in lane, siege in the mid game, and teamfight at exactly like Baron and Dragon. Those are the big teamfight objectives. Outside of that, I mean, beyond getting caught, there aren't very many fights anymore in Japan. They really want to siege and poke and take small advantages and, try and build that, which is a great style. But Rampage has been focusing on team dive bot, We see that super, super often in EU and NA and LCK, where people just 4-man the bot lane. They get completely caught off, and it's 4v2 and they take a turret. So they're about an objective style now. They're about, putting that together and just making it into the general objective style. And it seems a lot of other teams are really caught off guard by that,
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, like basically a lot of teams, at the Season 3 World Championship were already also very surprised when, China really brought that to the table, I think. Yeah, so that's interesting. So do you think that the LJL is a bit behind the world meta then?
Yes and no. I think that they're a little bit behind in terms of meta and being able to mesh with larger regions and adopting their playstyles and just, in general, taking as many things as they can from other regions and bringing them back to Japan. I think they're behind in that sense. Because when you look at America, when you look at Actually I should say in North America, when you look at, Europe, you see all of these players coming in, and they have so many imports and so many players from different regions bringing new styles, bringing new play, and then it's now it clashes, and then it comes together, and then it resolves to be a better play style than it would be if it was just NA playing against NA. NA against NA, we've had some really weird metas where it's been like, the 4-0 stuff. Like, it's always good to get an outside perspective, but yeah, they are a little bit behind in terms of getting that outside perspective, I think, because there's so few imports in the region. But mechanically, I think they can compete. They just need more time to be able to study other games and bring that to the table.
So do you think that Rampage has a lot to gain, from going to MSI, meeting all the teams from all over the world?
It depends, because you know how the MSI format has changed?
Yeah.
Um, for those of you who don't know, they have to play in a play-in stage. So if they can show up through the play-in stage and meet either NA or LMS, they have a lot to gain. But if they don't get to that stage, I'm not sure how much they can really gain from just playing other wildcard teams. I think they really need to try and get Korean scrims, try and get, LPL scrims, even if they're LPLSL, the secondary pro league. They need to get any kind of outside scrims that they can, more than they need the MSI practice, because the MSI format changes. If they were to play everybody at MSI, I'd say absolutely.
I mean, but outside of playing them in the tournament directly, you have kind of a lot of teams, focused in an area that does not really have that many great teams. We're, I think, in Brazil, right?
Yeah.
So, shouldn't it be halfway easy to maybe get one or two scrims against, the representatives of the LCK, LJL, or the LCSs?
I think to get scrims, it shouldn't be that hard. I think that LCK in particular is starting to recognize the power that some of these Japanese players bring to the board, and mechanically, they have some really amazing talents again. So, if they can prove that to LCK, to LPL, whoever they can, I think that they could get some scrims. It's just a matter of, again, if they show up on an international stage or something, the teams will be coming to them rather than them going to the teams.
All right. Obviously, it will kind of depend on, how Rampage is showing up. So let's talk about the team a bit. So could you give me a quick rundown of, like, how the team members, lock together?
So in the top lane, we have Evie. He's a tank player. He loves tanks. That's mostly what he plays. I don't think we've seen him on a carry since week 4 or 5. It's been a very long time, and even then it was just a Camille. So very traditional role player in the top lane. He does what he needs to, stands as a big man in the front line, loves to disrupt fights, loves to just get in wherever he can and just sort of, make waves. But I'd like to say he's a role player, and just as a result, he does play, tanks, but he can make big plays. It's just he doesn't often need to because of the other members. And the other members, in particular, we're going to talk about the jungle and mid. Tussle is their jungler, and Ramune is their mid. And Tussle is a very aggressive jungler. He loves to fight. He loves to gank early. He loves to punish lanes. So he is the catalyst for most of the Rampage action. He just gets in the fight, does as much damage as possible, initiates, gets picks. Everything that they do generally starts off of what he's doing. And the first person to follow him up is often Ramune. Ramune is a star player mid. He's often been debated as the first or second best mid in Japan, alongside Seros, who is the mid for Detonation Focus Me. And Ramune in particular has great synergy with his jungler. Like, they know when to gank, they know when to roam. The 4-man style is Tussle and Ramune a lot of the times come to the bot lane and make it work, just absolutely demolish. And even in the mid lane, Ramune is a very potent threat in lane, pressuring lane, so we'll keep our eye on him as the solo playmaker mid. If he gets an advantage early, you'll probably see him roam with Tussle in order to get more of an advantage for his team. And as for the bot lane, Yutori Moyasi is their AD, and he essentially plays safe. He plays very far back. He just does damage, stays alive. He's not a supreme playmaker. He's not, weaving in and out double lift Vayne, solo carrying. But he also doesn't need to be. As long as he's putting out damage, Tussle and Ramune are engaging, Evi's in his front line, Dara, his support, is going to always be on a safe-ish lane to protect him. Like, he goes either Zyra for some peel, or he goes Nami, or Janna, or all of these other picks just to try and make sure he can do that damage, and together they are just a very safe, effective, consistent backline.
Mm-hmm. All right, so hearing this right now, we have some factors that definitely, fit the meta quite well. You have a mid laner that likes to, roam with his jungler, an aggressive jungler, which, we see quite a lot. A very supportive top laner, which, let me ask you this. Do you think that, like right now we have we have carries and tanks in the top lane, and that's usually kind of the case when we have a bit of a meta shift, as we have right now due to the Play of the Rune King changes. But usually after a while, some playstyles just prevail. So do you think that that we are going to see both things in the top lane continuing into MSI?
For Evi himself?
Generally. And then
In
then thinking, does that help Evi, or does it, is it a problem for him? For example, if you think that tanks are actually going to prevail, it'd probably fit him, right?
Yeah, I think that in particular the Bork changes could enable some niche picks, like some pocket picks. If they do bring things to the table, we're going to see things that absolutely are just trying to upset the meta. I mean, we could see some really strange picks. We've seen Tryndamere in OCE. We've seen just, again, things that absolutely abuse Bork, try to abuse lane. If those become popular and meta at MSI, he's going to have a really tough time.
But I mean, we also have some like relatively meta picks that definitely, would benefit from it. So, for example, we have like the Fizz coming back into prominence. Kled could build it if he wants to, as a second item, for example. We have Fiora, who might be wanting to pick it up. So, do you think it would only be niche picks that would try to take advantage of it?
I think maybe. The reason I hedge towards it being more niche picks is because if you start running only aggressive jungler or only aggressive tops, you limit then how your jungle can play. He needs to consider, what is my top doing? Does he need assistance? How can I get him snowballing? Rather than just focusing on the 2 lanes that he normally does. So it's going to introduce a lot of, testing of teams, management of their pressure, management of their time. If those picks do become really strong, Evi could struggle because, again, Fizz deals really well with tanks. Fiora does insanely well against tanks. They'll have to look at their pick ban, they'll have to look at how the meta is shifting, and decide for themselves if it matters enough. Because if they don't change their pick ban, and Fiora becomes meta, and Fizz becomes meta, and all of these Bork champs take over top lane, I think Evi is really going to struggle at MSI.
All right. As I said, jungle mid synergy definitely supports Rampage though. The only thing that I could see as a problem is, you said that the AD carry. How is his name again? I'm sorry.
Tori Moyasi.
All right. He said he's a very laid back AD carry. Like some champions in the meta definitely support that. We have Ashe still in there. You see Varus being picked up quite a bit. We have Caitlyn, but the most prevalent is probably the Lucian. So how do you see him as a Lucian player?
His Lucian is in lane very clean. He does punish with the Lucian. He does go aggressive, and as much as I've said, he's a safe player. That's his teamfight style, right? He's going to be in the backline, but in lane, he can play aggressive. He can take the Lucian. He can go aggressive, burst out Karmas, burst out Ezreals, take advantage of windows for trading. He's not required to be passive. It's just that's his preferred way of dealing damage in a team fight. So as a Lucian player, I actually think he's probably one of the best in Japan right now, if not the best Lucian in Japan. It's a champion that fits his style very well because he loves moving around with his team, just keeping that backline shield in front of him as he rotates through the fight. And surprisingly enough, Lucian does really well at that. He can weave in and out of his tanks and just block so much damage that would otherwise be thrown at him.
Do you think that the Tom Kench picks help him in that regard? Or is it...
Yes and no. It is banned a lot, including by Rampage, but going into MSI, so few regions play Tom Kench, aside from Japan, that I think that it won't... If they do take their time, do their homework, I don't think it's going to go through very often. I don't think teams are going to let him play that, let Evie pick up the TK, because if it's a tank top meta, TK does well at that, and Evie can play the TK, so he does well with the Tom Kench, it does keep him safer, but realistically, I don't think it's going to go through.
All right, so we kind of laid it out now how, you think they're going to perform in general, but going more to the specifics, how do you think the LJL in particular, obviously Rampage, is going to perform? First of all, how do you think they are against the, let's say, lesser wildcard regions? So that would include something like historically Oceania wasn't that good. We have Latin America South. So how do you think they're going to perform against those?
Oh, that's really hard to say because this is Rampage. I mean, for the last forever, we've always seen Detonation focus me. They've always been the guys. They've always gone through. And Rampage, I mean, this is one of their first really big international tournaments. For them, it's going to be a test. I think that in terms of, wildcard regions, they're probably towards the top in mechanical skill. I think they're definitely above, LAN, LAS, OCE, and towards more of the Turkey, CIS, like Brazil side of things with, good mechanical play. Their rotations have been really crisp recently. They found some kind of magic in a team play. I'm not sure if that's their coaches doing or not, but it's starting to come together, and they have a really good shot. I think they could end up easily top 3 in the, wildcard groups at MSI, but making it out of wildcard groups and against the, LUL NA, like place 3 and LMS place 3 wildcard teams, good jokes, guys, but NA is apparently actually wildcard. But against those, I think they would really, really struggle. Like, NA is extremely developed as a region. Even a third place team, like let's say it's Phoenix 1, those guys are really good at the game. I think that they would have about a 10% chance at beating Phoenix 1 in a best of 3 or best of 5. And against LMS, they'd probably have like a 20 to 25% chance. It's not fantastic, but they could probably make it out of wildcard groups.
So, okay, I'm not going to go into this too much because we're talking about the LJL, but do you think that Taiwan is weaker than NALCS? Like, just a quick question.
Only when you divide it into the top 3 teams. Because recently, LMS has been looking... I just say lost.
I mean, we're talking about the top team here at MSI.
Oh, is that their top team?
MSI is always sending the top team.
Oh, it's only sending the top team. Okay, never mind. No, LMS's top team is, no, they're really clean.
Yeah.
I thought this was, for some reason, I was thinking 3 spots worlds. They're expanding it, and it got completely mixed up. No, apparently they're sending top teams. Never mind. If it's top team of NA versus top team of LMS, that depends on who the top team of NA is at the end of the split. We still don't know. I think if it's Cloud9, LMS might have the edge. I think they'd be able to figure Cloud9 out. But if it is TSM, I'd give them a slight edge.
All right, not to dwindle on that too much. So you don't think that Redemption can really make it out of the play-ins and into the actual, round robin of the tournament?
It's very unlikely, I think. Especially now that I know exactly who they're facing. If they do make it out of the wildcard pools, I think that, yeah, their chances are very, very slim. These are extremely polished teams, especially at the top of their region. I mean, Flash Wolves are not a team you want to mess with on your first international outing. They are, and this is the team that took games off of Rock's Tigers. This is the team that is known as the legendary Korean Slayers. Like, these guys are fantastic, and if you're taking a look at TSM or Cloud9 or Phoenix One, all these fantastic North American teams as well, that's stiff competition. I mean, no matter which way you slice it, even if they get out of, the wildcard plans, which I think they could, they need to get through NA or LMS, and that's a very tall order.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, the play-ins end after they played LMS or NALCS. It's when they get into the group with, Korea, EU, and the LPL.
Yeah, it's just, to get into that group requires
Everything,
so much
probably
to go right and so much to go wrong on the other side. I mean, this would have to be the best Rampage has ever played, and a mediocre showing from either LMS or NA, I think.
All right. So, do you have anything more to say?
I think what I'd close out with is, if you're interested in LJL, absolutely watch the region. They are growing at an incredible pace, and I think with this next season of play, we're going to see the most competitive, because this was the most competitive this past season, by the way. For those of you who don't know, 3 teams ended with an 8-2 record. The only teams they lost to were the other 2 top teams. So if that continues, if these teams continue trading blows, developing metas, practicing their brains out, these guys have incredible heart, incredible passion for the game. They could absolutely start to make massive waves in the League of Legends scene. So keep your eye on them. In a year or two, we could be talking about LJL as the next force to come into Worlds.
All right. And if you want to see the LJL finals, they are on the Competeleague YouTube channel, casted by Zeda. So head to youtube.com/user/Competeleague and watch them there. And if you want to see the LJL in the future, obviously follow us on follow the Competeleague channel on Twitch, twitch.tv/Competeleague. Yeah, and if you want to watch any other interviews with the Wildcard casters at Competeleague, stay on this channel. Thank you for your time, Zeda. Where can we find you other than the Competeleague channel?
Twitter at ZEDABETA, Zeta Beta. Yeah, and thank you for having me. I mean, it's always a joy when I get to talk about Japan, because these guys, they really don't get the attention they deserve.
All right, thank you for watching.